Hello and welcome to Break Check, Rocket League Esports Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the European Regional number 3 for the winter split. This regional determined the final 3 teams that are going to be representing the European region alongside BDS and Queso in LA. It's going to be the winter major. This will be, it's a very important note here, this will be the first international event in 2 years that has included a crowd. We had our first international event in 2 years in Sweden in December of last year, of 2021. But it was a bubble event. There were players only, no crowd. And now, the winter split, the crowd will be there. And I cannot describe how excited I am. It will be here very soon at the end of the month. And I can't wait. So let's just dive right in. Today we're going to be talking about, like I said, the third regional of the winter split for the European region. And lead the way here with groups. Group A, we got Luminosity stuck in here with BDS yet again, but this time Luminosity gets the better of them. We also have Cookster's Minions and Misfits Gaming. And now I do have to tell a little bit of a story here, or a little bit of a backstory. Misfits Gaming, for 2 splits straight, has been in a position where they control their own destiny. If they win enough games in the third regional of the fall split and now the winter split as well, they would go to the major. But they have fallen short both times. In the fall, we had the Swiss stage, and we know how that rocks. You lose 3 games and you're out. And Misfits Gaming, unfortunately, went 0-3 in the Swiss stage in the regional number 3 of the fall. So they were one of the first 2 teams eliminated from the event. And now we've got this group stage here. This is a little bit different format. And so now with group stage, you have 4 teams that are eliminated from their groups. And yet again, we see Misfits falling out of the tournament early. And the crazy thing about it is, it was Cookster's Minions once again that eliminated them. Cookster's Minions is also who did it in the fall. So this is just heartbreaking for Misfits. I don't know what else to say besides it's just got to be nerves. You know, it's got to be the weight of that moment, because they performed well in the events leading up to regional number 3, where, you know, their major berth is determined. And then when that regional number 3 rolls around, it happened in the fall, it happened now again in the winter, just didn't make it happen. So I still believe that Misfits is a top 5, top 6, top 7 caliber team. And I think, unfortunately, they're just not putting the performance together when it matters the most, which is important. So hopefully we see Misfits bounce back. I don't expect to see a roster change in this offseason, in this trade window with Misfits in particular, but we've seen much crazier things happen before. We'll see what that holds. Luminosity taking that 1 seed from Group A was huge for their implications as far as a major berth. And we obviously are looking in hindsight now, and we know that Luminosity did not make it. But coming out on top of the group guaranteed them a top 6 finish, which was, at the time, incredible. And it made it seem as though LG was actually in a great spot to qualify. BDS taking second, Cookster's Minis taking third in the group. We got Group B, Dignitas taking a 3-0 perfect performance through the group stage. EG 2-1. K-Corp getting that 1-2 performance to get through as a 3rd seed. And then Rick's GG, unfortunately, getting bounced in groups. One thing I do want to mention really quick, though. Evil Geniuses was in a similar position as Luminosity and Misfits. If they were able to secure that 1 seed in the group and secure a top 6 finish, that was going to be very helpful for their major berth. So at that time, when we had group stage, EG was a little bit disappointed with this performance. They wanted to get that 1 seed, but they did survive, and that's what matters most. Group C, we got 0-0 Nation coming out on top of the group. What? And that's no knock on 0-0 Nation, but I don't think they are a team that people would have predicted to take down Queso. I think people would probably put them on a level playing field, or maybe a bit above Guild and Vitality. But I think there are very few that would have predicted 0-0 Nation coming out on top of this group. So props to them. They deserve their credit. Guild has, when they added CRR to the roster, they have just, there's been a fire lit under this roster, under this team. And I'm really excited because I think Noli and Devo are both very good players. And I think they've just had a team composition issue. I think for a while now, Guild has had 3 capable players and they've had multiple iterations of the roster, but it just hasn't worked. And it seems as though CRR has been a good fit, and Guild have looked really good in these last 2 regionals. We got Queso falling to the 3rd seed here in the groups with a 1 and 2 performance, and Vitality going 0. Vitality, this has just been a fall from grace. There's nothing else to say about it other than just it's disappointing. It's sad. You hate to see a team that had such strong stature in the Rocket League esports space, just tumble down the hill. They're just falling down the ladder at an insane rate right now. I expect, and I don't say that too often, I expect to see a roster change in this trade window. I just don't. I know that those players hold themselves to a very high standard. We know K-Dop's on that roster. K-Dop has found a ton of success throughout his career. I also think Vitality as an organization probably holds themselves to a high standard, and they're not meeting that standard. They're not meeting that expectation. So I would not be surprised in the slightest to see a roster change with that team before the spring split. We got Group D here. Endpoint coming out on top. Williams Resolve grabbing that 2nd seed. Semper grabbing a 3rd seed, and unfortunately Na'Vi being eliminated. We did have a tiebreaker match for both 1 and 3 seeds. So Semper ends up taking that tiebreaker match here against Na'Vi, knocking them out of the tournament. And Endpoint ends up taking the match against Williams Resolve, securing that number 1 seed. So we'll drop down here. And, I will talk a little bit about this battle for 4th and 5th. So once we saw at this stage in the tournament, once we saw Dignitas take the top in their group, take that number 1 seed, and then Dignitas ended up in the upper semifinal, that secured their spot in the major. So at that point in the tournament, that's the end of day, or not even the end of day 1, but part of the way through day 1, Dig grabbed their spot. And so we had Dignitas, BDS, and Queso securing 3 of the 5 potential spots for Europe. And then we still had Evil Geniuses in the race. We still had a long shot, but we had Guild. We had Carmine Corp still in the race. We had, I think Semper was still technically possible, but they were a long shot as well. And then, obviously, Misfits had been eliminated from the race. We still had Luminosity in the race, and I think 0-0 Nation was in the race as well if they won the event. So there was still quite a bit of battling for that 4th and 5th spot. And like I said, Evil Geniuses continued on their run. Semper was eliminated early. BDS being eliminated by, that's a bit of a head scratcher. We know, and I am not alone in this. Everybody across all regions, casters, players, whoever, has talked about K-Corp in the same manner all season. We know they have the high ceiling. We know they do. They just aren't showing it. We've seen them perform much closer to their floor than their ceiling time and time again. And so while we know that things like this are possible, no one expects it. And BDS, we saw some tweets just like in the fall. We saw a relatively poor performance from them in regional number 3 for their standards. It's not poor by any means, but for their standards. And we saw some tweeting and everything from those players. Yet again, we see that another poor performance here in regional 3, and we saw some more tweeting from the players kind of, I would just say, explaining why their performance was not. And they mentioned something along the lines of not getting scrims for a couple of the days, maybe 2 or 3 days leading up to the event. So I don't know what the deal was. Maybe time conflicts, schedule conflicts. I don't really know. But BDS gets eliminated, lowers round 1 by K-Corp. And I think this may be the earliest exit from a tournament that BDS has ever had since RLCS Season X. I don't know that they've ever been eliminated in this 9 through 12 spot. This is a very, very, very early exit for this team. And with that, I felt like K-Corp may have had a little bit of momentum, right? They're probably excited. I feel like that team is one of those teams when they get a little bit rolling, I feel like they could just that could just ignite the fire for K-Corp, right? Again, we know they have that high ceiling potential. We're just not seeing it. And so they need that spark. They need something to get them to believe, get that confidence up. And I thought this may have been it. We see Queso grab the 3rd seed in their, let me make sure I'm correct. Yeah, Queso grabbed the 3rd seed in their group, and they almost fall to Williams Resolve in lowers round 1. In fact, if we look at this is a reverse sweep. And there were 4 overtimes in the 5 games. Queso barely survived this first round in day 1. The first round of lowers, at least. The first round of lowers, Queso barely survived. All right, so we continue moving forward. Like I said, there's a battle for 4th and 5th place going on. We're going to look at the rest of this playoff bracket here. K-Corp also almost take down Queso. Let's look at this because if I remember correctly, this was kind of a wacky match as well. Yeah, Queso takes 2, K-Corp takes 2, and then Queso finally bounces back in game number 5. But we're seeing this Queso slow start to the tournament. We hadn't really seen that in the winter split at the very least. They looked really good throughout. And they got a very, very slow start to this 3rd event. But we'll see later on. I mean, you guys can kind of take a glance at it now. They heated up. You know what I'm saying? Queso, they put the cheese in the microwave, right? They heat that thing up. They got it melting, hot, steaming as the tournament went on. We got Evil Geniuses and Guild. Like I said, I do think Guild was still in the running for it, even though they had a very slim chance. EG takes them down and eliminates them from the running as well. 3-1. So as EG gets further and further and further into this event, things are looking better. And so let's take a look up here at the upper semifinal. We had Endpoint taking down Luminosity in a 4-0 sweep, and Dignitas taking down 0-0 also in a 4-0 sweep. I don't know that this happened at all, at least between the North American and European regions throughout this entire split, where we had a double sweep up here. This is crazy. So Luminosity gets knocked down here, and 0-0 Nation gets knocked down here as well. So Luminosity, Evil Geniuses, both battling for that last 4th or 5th spot. Once Endpoint secured this victory right here, I think they also locked in their spot as the number 4 team. So there's one spot left. Luminosity, Evil Geniuses, they're fighting for it. Goes to game 7, and Evil Geniuses ends up taking the victory. And then once we see 0-0 Nation eliminated, that locked things in for Evil Geniuses. What I do want to talk about, though, for just a moment is Luminosity and their winter split. Luminosity is a great team, ton of potential. I think they had a little bit of misfortune throughout the winter. Ultimately, you need to win games, and you need to beat the teams that are at the top to become a top team. That's just how it is. But I do sympathize with them just a little bit because, again, they landed in a very tough group every single event, and they just weren't able to make it happen. Now, that's not all. That's not all that ended up costing Luminosity their spot. They ended up falling out in lowers, a lower part of the bracket, relatively early on in the other 2. So there's no one to blame but themselves. But I do feel for that team just a little bit with a tough draw. The first couple events, I think the only teams they lost to is BDS and Dig, which are, I think undoubtedly top 3, top 4 teams in Europe. So Luminosity, I think if they can keep their head on straight and keep the motivation high, I think they've got a very bright future, and I'm excited to see them perform throughout the remainder of the season. We got EG versus Queso. Queso, again, tight match, goes to game 7, and this right here, I mean, from this point forward, Queso was just playing unbelievable Rocket League. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. I think that they played well in this match. Evil Geniuses, I think they're heating up as well. I think both of those teams throughout this event played really well. But Evil Geniuses, I think throughout the split, is kind of heating up and trending positively. So I'm excited to see EG at this major and see how they perform on the international stage. We'll bounce to this upper bracket final. Endpoint takedown Dig in a 4-2 fashion. This is just a nice series back and forth. It seems like Endpoint kind of has Dig's number. I think Endpoint gets the better of Dignitas more times than the... But yeah, Endpoint played well, looked good throughout this event. Great group stage, 4-0 in the upper semi, 4-2 in the upper final. And yeah, Endpoint looks great. They needed that too, especially because they had kind of some wonky situations with their boot camp. They ended up losing internet at their facility. They ended up going to an Endpoint staff member's living room and setting up shop in there. So, fighting adversity, dealing with some of those weird situations on the day of the event. Good for Endpoint to still bring a pretty good performance this day. And then Dig ends up falling to Queso 4-0. I mean, Queso, holy moly. Catching fire here towards the end of the event. And then Queso hits the bracket reset. Game 7 in the first set. And then they take them in game 6 in the second set. And, I mean, just incredible performance from Queso. As we have come to expect from this team, just mechanical wizards, all 3 of them, pulling all kinds of insane insanely technical, insanely advanced mechanical ability, mechanical plays individually, stringing them together. One of my favorite plays throughout the split that we've seen is an air dribble initiated by Vatira. He drags it up into the air, puts a flip reset down, pops it over one. Rise ends up coming into the air, taking that off of the Vatira flip reset, taking it into an air dribble, which a double tap, which he pops to the backboard and then buries. So this Team Queso, this roster is very, very dangerous. They have an extremely high ceiling mechanically, all three of them. We know that Vatira gets a ton of praise, and he deserves it. He is absolutely phenomenal, incredible to watch. We know that Joyo has some very flashy moves in his tool belt. He comes from that freestyler background, which I think provides him with a little bit better car control than many of the pros of the current day. But I also think Rise is somebody that, mechanically speaking, he slips under the radar a little bit. Everybody puts respect on Rise for, kind of being, I don't want to say this, but like kind of being an anchor for the team, and not even so much defensively, but just that solid player that they always have confidence in, and they know he's going to be where they need him to be. But I also think Rise deserves some credit for his mechanical ability as well, because it's also impressive. And we saw, if you didn't see, you need to go back and see Rise hit a game winner to secure things. That was an air dribble, flip reset, and then it followed it up into another air dribble bump off the end of that play. Queso looking incredible. And so it poses the question, BDS, Queso, who is better? And right now, we have to give the edge to Queso. You just have to. Of this winter split, they won 2 events. They were in the finals of every single one. At the moment, right now, Queso looks better. That may change when we get to the major. But at the moment, when we look at recent results, Queso has been absolutely incredible. Unbelievable. And they soared to this new level that they have achieved. It seemed like out of nowhere. I know people were talking about this team in the fall split, and I was sleeping on them. I was one of those people that was not on the Queso train, but I'm on the wagon now. Go Cheese. I'm in there, and they are so much fun to watch. I really enjoy watching that roster, and I'm excited to see them perform at LAN internationally. Can't wait to see that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. The last topic here is going to be major teams are set. So let's look at the European region. All right, we got Queso, Dig, BDS, Endpoint, and EG. That is 1 through 5. That's how the seeding is going to go. Following that up, we have Luminosity just behind them. What we're going to have to do, if we want to evaluate the winter split, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take these scores right here, these total points, and for the top 5 teams, just subtract this 120. Okay. So if we subtract 120 here, that's going to put EG at 590, which means Luminosity is not too terribly far behind. And then we got K-Corp, 0-0, Misfits, Williams Resolve, Guild. Look at Guild work. They didn't even make Winter Regional 1, and they are the 11th place team in the Winter. I'm telling you, we got to watch out for this Guild roster. Moving forward, I think they're going to look really good. So that's our Winter teams. Our European teams for the Winter Major. We come down here. I think I can go ahead and look at all of the teams. Something worth mentioning is the APAC qualifier. I'll get to that I'll go ahead and do that. We have Detonator. We have a new team from the APAC regions, North and South. Okay? I think most everyone was predicting Tokyo Verde, right? But Detonator, here, listen to this, okay? Detonator was not even qualified into the APAC major qualifier, all right? The way this works, APAC North, APAC South takes 2 teams from each of those, puts them together in a 4-team playoff, and the winning team goes on to the major. Detonator didn't even qualify for that, but a team from their region couldn't make it. They had to forfeit out. So Detonator slides in, and after sliding in, being gifted that spot in the qualifier, they take advantage of it, and now we see them qualifying for the major. Absolutely incredible. Really excited to watch this team play. If you haven't watched this series against Tokyo Verdy to qualify. You should go back and watch it. We took a look at it yesterday. Really good stuff from this team. I'm excited to see them play on the international stage. So NA teams, just to recap, we got NRG, G2, FaZe, V1, and Space Station. V1, a new face in the majors. Space Station, a new face in the majors as well. EU, we got Queso, Dig, BDS, Endpoint, EG. This time we got Queso, the number 1 seed, crazy enough. The new team for EU, and Evil Genius is a new team for EU. In the Oceanic region, we got Renegades, returning stars, and then we got Pioneers, new team from the Oceanic region. We go to MENA, Sandrock. It's what we expect. I don't anticipate that changing throughout the rest of the South America region. We got Furia once again. This is kind of the super team of this region, and obviously there are wonderful players on other teams, but this is the team that I think everyone is going to predict every time to make the majors. They are a very strong team, a lot of star power on his team, a lot of history on his team, a lot of experience on his team. So Furia, well done. We got Team Secret. Once again, new team, new faces. So with that being said, major teams are set in stone. We are ready to rock and roll for the Winter Major in Los Angeles. I am not going to make predictions, at least not yet. So we'll just conclude there. Like I said, that's a recap on the European Winter Regional number 3. Determine the final teams that are going to take those spots and represent the European region on the international stage. We got that coming up at the end of March. You do not want to miss it. Like I said, it's going to be the first event with a crowd in over 2 years. You need to be tuned in. Like I said, you don't want to miss that. I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you all so much. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll catch you next time. Peace.